Welcome everyone to the High Tech Yeti series on how to create Dungeons & Dragons abilities in Minecraft. This is Fireball Part 4, the final part. Today we'll be finishing our Fireball, and here's what it'll look like when it's done. Charges up, cool sound effect. Release it, it goes on cooldown. We have a visual cue for it being on cooldown, and it creates a big, beautiful explosion. And the explosion sets entities around it on fire, deals damage, and deals knockback. And when the fireball is finished, we'll do one last thing. We'll remove the need to have the command block running our core function, and instead we'll replace that with a tick function. That way our data pack will automatically run in the background. Alright, let's jump in. So first let's see what our fireball spell looks like right now. We charge it, it makes no noise, we'll have to add that too. We release it, cool looking fireball, but no explosion and no cooldown. So first, let's do the cooldown. In order to have a cooldown, we're going to need a variable to keep track of our current cooldown. So we'll do scoreboard objectives add, and let's call this fireball underscore CD. And once again, it'll be a dummy variable. And as with all dummy variables that we're going to be checking on the player, we want to initialize a value. Usually we'll initialize these values as 0. So scoreboard players set. We'll do all players, fireball cooldown 0. Perfect. Now we can check and see if our fireball cooldown is currently equal to 0. And if it is, we'll allow the player to charge the fireball spell. Alright, so back into our data pack. We want to check if fireball cooldown is 0 before anything else happens. In this case, the very first thing that tries to charge our fireball spell is when we set casting to 5. As long as casting is 1 or more, then that means we're currently trying to charge our fireball spell. And so we don't want the player to even be able to set casting to 5 at all, unless fireball cooldown is currently equal to 0. So we'll look at scores, and currently we only check to see if you're holding down caret. And after caret equals 1 ... we'll put comma, and then we'll check and see if fireball underscore CD equals 0. Awesome. Now our fireball cooldown equaling 0 is required to charge our spell at all. But we are going to want to make sure that if we ever have a score of fireball cooldown, that it's constantly counting down. That way we can cast it again later. So we'll just copy one of these, we'll add it to the bottom, and we'll say if any player has a score of fireball cooldown equaling 1 or more, then at that player run scoreboard players not set, but remove fireball cooldown and 1. So if any player has a score of 1 or more in fireball cooldown, then every tick that fireball cooldown will get -1. Now the last thing we have to do to require on the code side for fireball cooldown to work is actually give the player a score in fireball cooldown upon successfully casting the spell. So let's look for a good spot to give our player a score in fireball cooldown. Well, right here is where we actually launch the spell. So this seems like a good spot to me. And it already has the condition that we want for the player to actually get a score in fireball cooldown. So we can just copy this condition, and right after they cast the fireball, we'll do run scoreboard players set, and then @s for this player, fireball underscore cooldown, and I'm going to choose 100. There's 20 ticks per second, so a score of 100 means that this will take 5 seconds to count back down to 0. Alright, next we want to give the player a visual cue that they can no longer cast the fireball spell and it's on cooldown. A great way to do that is to use the gray icon that we added in Fireball Episode 1. If you don't happen to have that icon, feel free to download the entire resources in the description below. So I'm going to go back to my resource pack, new D&D RP. I'm going to go to textures, item, caret and a stick, and there we go. This is the gray version of our icon, and if it follows my convention for naming, then number 2 would mean that it's custom model data 2. But we'll confirm that right now. Models, item, caret and a stick, and there is no custom model data 2. I'm glad I looked. So let's click on 1 and we'll just do Control-C, Control-V. And we'll rename this to 2. Let's open that up. And we only have to change one thing. I want to change the name of the texture from 1.png to 2.png. All right, save, and we can close that. All right, so now I have an image and a model for my carrot and a stick with custom model data 2. And the only difference is that it's a gray version of the same image. So because this does something slightly different, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create a new section. I love to keep organized. I'm going to name this section Fireball Cooldown Icon. And so in this section, I'm going to do two different things. I'm going to check and see if I've just cast the Fireball spell. And if I have, I'm going to change the item in my hand in the hotbar slot that I want it to be at to the gray version. And then when Fireball cooldown equals 1, I'm going to change it right back to the colored version. I want my code to be very efficient. So when Fireball cooldown equals 1, it's just about to be off cooldown. And so that's a perfect time to change the icon back to the colored version. We already know what the condition will be, and we can copy and paste that in a moment. But we want to use the /item option, and we want to replace the item in a certain item slot on our player with the gray version of the carrot and a stick icon. So we're going to first choose that it's a player that we're affecting, and then we're going to choose the slot. And in this case, I have my icon in hotbar.4. And so for me, I'm making it so that if any player is playing my sorcerer class and they have the sorcerer abilities, then they can't move them. They can't drop them. They'll always be in a certain hotbar slot. That way I can do commands like this, putting it on cooldown and switching the item in order to switch the image of the icon. So I want to replace the hotbar slot number 4 with a carrot and a stick, and I want to put all the same information the carrot and a stick should have. So custom name will be Fireball, unbreakable true. The custom model data should be 2 in this case, not 1. It doesn't need custom data because we can't actually cast with it, so we'll ignore that. But we do want to hide all the flags again, so it'll just be an icon on our hotbar. All right, so now we can copy this and back into our data pack, and we'll paste that. And the condition for having this happen is when we've just cast our Fireball. So once again, we'll copy the condition right here, and we'll make that the beginning. So execute as any player has score of casting equals 0, meaning that they've let go of right click, but they have a score of summon Fireball equal 62, meaning Fireball is completely charged up. So they've just cast the Fireball spell. Then at that player, we want to replace the item in hotbar number 4 on that player with a carrot and a stick called Fireball still, but with custom model data 2. Now to change back to the colored version. So back in MC Stacker, we'll change custom model data to 1 instead of 2, which is the colored version. And we'll add the custom data needed to be able to test for right click, which is just Fireball:1. Awesome, let's copy that. And back in here, paste this, and we will copy the beginning part of this. We're going to have a slightly different condition now. So we don't care what casting equals, because if we're casting a different spell, we still want this to happen. So we'll remove that. And we don't want summon Fireball. We don't care about that. Instead, we just want to check and see if Fireball underscore cooldown equals exactly 1. And again, I chose 1 because it's really close to 0, and we wouldn't want this command happening over and over and over again. So back into Minecraft, we'll do /reload. And we're also going to reload our resource pack because we just added custom model data 2 into it. So function F3T for me. You might be just F3T on your computer. All right, let's try it out. Let's cast our Fireball. And there we go. Gray icon. We're on cooldown. Cooldown ends and back to colored icon. Beautiful. We can cast again and everything works. Awesome. So next we want to add sound effects for when we're charging and launching our Fireball spell. In order to do that, we're going to have to add our own custom sounds. So into our resource pack in the Assets Minecraft folder, the first thing we're going to do is create a location to hold those sounds. So we're going to create a new folder and call it Sounds. And then inside that folder, we're going to create another new folder, and this will be the category of these sounds. I'm going to call them Custom. Inside that Custom folder, I'm going to drop the 2 sounds that I'll be using, These are available in the resources below. I have Fireball Charging and Fireball Launch. One important thing to remember about adding custom sounds to Minecraft is to make sure their file type is .ogg. If you go online and find some cool sounds and they're MP3 or MP4, all you have to do is go to Google and type MP3, convert to OGG. Now back to our Minecraft folder in our resource pack, so Assets, Minecraft. Here I need to create a JSON file. I'm going to right click and create a new document. I'm going to call this document Sounds, open it up, and then go to File, Save As, and change the Save As type to All Files, and then manually add .json to the end. Press Save, and there we go. Now I have a Sounds JSON file type. I can delete the Sounds text document, and we're all set. In the sounds.json, we have to tell Minecraft what the command will be to play our sounds and what the location of the sounds will be. So we're going to do open curly bracket, enter. Inside quotes, the first thing we'll write is custom.fireball_charging. Then after that, colon, space, new curly brackets. And then we have to put the name of the folder that they're coming from, which all sounds come from the sounds folder. So sounds, colon, space, and then square brackets. And now we have to say the location inside the sounds folder for this sound. So inside new quotes, custom folder / fireball_charging. Now I have two sounds that I'm adding, so I'm going to copy from here to here, put a comma at the end of these sets of curly brackets, enter, and paste. And then I'll just change charging both times to launch. All right, so I'll do file save, and close that, jump back into Minecraft. Let's reload the resource pack and make sure that worked. All right, so I'll do /play sound, and then I'll type the word custom for our category, and there they are, but let's make sure they play as well. So I'll choose fireball charging. I'll do type ambient. I'm going to do all players for now. Tildes, because I want the sound to originate at the player. And then the volume, I'll do 75. And there we go. It works great. Okay. So let's copy this command because we're going to use this in just a moment. And then back to our data pack. Okay. In our data pack, I'm first going to paste that play sound command so I have it ready. Right after I add 1 to summon Fireball 1, it's exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to copy from here to here, paste, and then add this. So execute as any player is holding our Fireball spell, has a mana of 1 or more, casting 1 or more, so they're holding right click, and then summon Fireball, and I don't want less than or equal to 61, I want equal to exactly 1. And then at that player at S, run, play sound, Minecraft Fireball. And I'm actually going to make it so only this player will hear it, but if you want all players around the player to also hear the sound of them charging their spell, then you can leave this at S as at A. So when any player is summoning the Fireball spell, but when summon Fireball equals exactly 1, it will start playing the Fireball charging sound. Now my Fireball charging sound is pretty long, and I don't want it to continue to play when the person finishes casting the spell or when the person lets go of casting the spell before the spell was fully charged. So let's go to our cancel Fireball section first. This condition says execute as any player, casting equals 0, so they let go of right click, and summon Fireball equals 1 or more. And so directly above this, before this actually finishes and sets summon Fireball back to 0, I'm going to paste this condition. I'm going to use the stop sound command. Stop sound at S, and the type of sound is an ambient sound, and the name of the sound. Next, I want to add one more sound effect for when we actually launch the Fireball. And once again, we have a perfect condition already made. The condition is when casting is 0, so I let go of right click, but summon Fireball equals exactly 62, meaning I fully charged it. Then in this case, I want to play the sound Fireball launch. And I'm going to copy the play sound command, Control C, Control V, and just change charging to launch. And save all. All right, that should be good. Let's go into Minecraft and see if it works. Okay, so let's try that. We'll do /reload. Hold down right click, we start charging our sound. Let go, the sound goes away. And let's fully charge it. And when we release and fire the spell, the sound went away as well, and we had the fireball launch sound too. Perfect. Let's move on. Now, welcome to my second favorite website probably ever made for Minecraft. This website is called Particle Plots. So our idea is that we want to have a beautiful fiery explosion happen when the fireball spell explodes. But we need to do a few different tricks to make this both look beautiful and not be too computer intensive. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have several different spheres of fire particles that grow quickly when the explosion happens. And then we're going to make those particles spin in circles, making it look like we have a dome of growing fire when our fireball explodes. So the first thing we want to do is you can change this option right here to get a bunch of different shapes, and we want the sphere, of course. And if you press draw, it'll do any changes you make, and you can add some additional particles, which we actually do want to do. Anything around 500 would be perfect. And in settings, you can change the particle type, but I actually want flame, which is the default, so I'll leave that as is. We want to tilt this circle so that the spiral happens top to bottom, not sideways. So all we have to do is reverse the signs. So we'll paste that one there, grab this one, paste, boom, and draw, and there we go. Now the spiral happens top to bottom, and when we make the whole sphere spin really quickly, it will look like a nice beautiful dome, and it'll have a really cool spin effect to it too. The next thing is we want to have several different sizes of these domes. These numbers right here represent how big it is. So right now, this is a 1x1 block dome of fire. I want to have a bunch of different sizes for this. So I'm going to first show you how to make bigger ones, then I'll explain how many we'll have, and then I'm going to jump ahead and create them. That way you guys don't have to watch the tedious steps. The biggest dome we're going to make is going to be a 5x5 dome. So I'm going to do that one first. Go to the end of each of these lines and just do times 5. And press draw, and there we go. Now it's 5x5. Perfect. And so this is the biggest dome that we're going to want. It's also the one I'm going to experiment with, and so I'm going to press the export button. Open that up, and inside is the MC function file that it created for us. So let's go back to our data pack and our functions folder, and we're going to have a couple of these, so I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder explosion because that's what it does, and then inside the explosion folder, I'll drag in particles. So first, let's check this out, then we'll make a few different sizes. Now back in Minecraft, to make this look good, I've set up a little demonstration for us. So I'm going to create an execute command that will play our new function on the armor stand. That way we can see what it looks like right now. Execute as an entity, type equals armor stand, distance equals ... 10, so an armor stand within 10 blocks. Or so at the armor stand within 10 blocks. Add s, I'm going to run function, and here's my new explosion folder with the particles function. Repeating and always active, and there we go. So that looks pretty cool, but as you can see, there's plenty of space in between. So instead, as a demonstration of what we'll do, we're going to create another command. So with the same condition, an execute command executing at the armor stand within 10 blocks, I'm going to run TP. I'm going to TP that armor stand, and 3 tildes to TP it to itself. That way it won't actually move. But then I'm going to add 2 more tildes so I can give rotation as well. And on this one, I'm going to do 45, repeating always active, and there we go. That's how we're going to create the dome explosion. But even that, you can see there's still a lot of gaps in it. But that's okay, because when we create the dome explosion, we're going to have a whole bunch of different sized domes that will grow inside out. And because of that, it'll look like the dome is actually full of fire. So the first thing I did is I went and made a whole bunch of these different particles that are all the exact same thing, but I just changed the number times 5 to progressively smaller numbers. So 1 is a 1x1 block, 1, 2, 5 is a 1.25 block, 1.5 is a 1.5 size block, etc. So I wanted to have just enough of these so that it looks like the inside of the fireball is full of fire. And this should do just fine. Alright, so back to our data pack. Now that we have all of these awesome looking explosion particles, let's use them. First, I'm going to copy a new section, and I'll put it right underneath launching fireball. And this will be the fireball explosion section. So in order to have the fireball explosion run, we're going to need a variable to keep track of the steps. And in order to keep track of where the fireball is before it explodes, we're going to need a variable for that too. Let's jump back into Minecraft and create both those variables now. So just scoreboard objectives add. And first I'm going to create a variable called fireball_moving. And this variable will never affect our player, so I don't have to initiate it. Enter and we're done. Next I'll create a fireball_explosion variable. And once again, this variable will never be on our player, so create it and we're done. So fireball explosion will keep track of which function should be running of the explosion, and fireball moving will actually keep track of the steps of our fireball moving. The moment our fireball stops moving, that means it exploded, which means that we want to trigger the explosion. All right, so back in our fireball explosion section, what we're going to have happen is when our fireball explosion actually triggers, we're going to have not an armor stand, but an area effect cloud that'll be given the score fireball explosion that we just created. And that fireball explosion score will count down, creating the fireball explosion. So we're going to do execute as any entity whose scores equals, and then fireball_explosion equals exactly 34. And I play with this for a little while to get what I liked for good explosion. You can feel free to make it up yourself as well. And then @s run function, and then our function will be our smallest explosion first, because we're going to count down doing our smallest explosion first until we get to the biggest explosion. And so run function d&d explosion, that's the folder, and then slash particles_1. So this is our first line, and when fireball explosion equals exactly 34, which is the first number it'll start at, then at the area effect cloud, that'll be where our fireball exploded, it'll run the smallest function of our explosion. Now let's copy this a whole bunch of times and then I'll explain it. I play with this for a while, and to make it look like it's really full of fire inside the explosion, I found that having every tick running 2 different size explosions at once until I got to the biggest explosion looks the coolest. So when fireball explosion equals exactly 34, then the area effect cloud will create the smallest explosion and the next smallest. At 33, it'll create the next 2 sizes. At 32, it'll create the next 2 sizes. And then, while fireball explosion is between 1 and 26, so while it's finishing its countdown, it'll be the biggest explosion. What this will do is, while the fireball explosion is growing, it'll look like a mammoth fireball. And then as it begins to fade away, it'll fade away from the inside out. Next, we want to make it so that whenever fireball explosion is 1 or more, then the area effect cloud will rapidly spin, just like we tried out before with the armor stand. And so execute as any entity has fireball explosion 1 ... so 1 or more, then run tp @s, and then tilde, so we're keeping it at the same location, then tilde45, that way it'll rotate in place really rapidly on the horizontal plane. Awesome. Okay, so creating our explosion is all set. That was the easy part. Now we have to track our fireball as it moves. Okay, so before we actually do the code that will track our fireball movement, let's add 2 lines of code in cast fireball. When we summon our fireball, I want to also summon an area effect cloud, and this area effect cloud will be the area effect cloud that will follow our fireball. And then I want to give that area effect cloud a score of fireball_moving, because this area effect cloud will be what keeps track of if our fireball is still moving or if it's been destroyed, and therefore the explosion should happen. So since I've already done this command a whole bunch of times, I'm going to save some time by copying and pasting it and bringing it in. So just like our fireball, execute at the player, and as the player, run execute position to 3 blocks in front of the player, summon an area effect cloud, at the same height as the fireball, 1.5 blocks up, and tag that area effect cloud, fireball, and new, and also give it a duration of 4 seconds. Next, I want to say scoreboard players set, and then @E, and then if their type equals area effect cloud, and tag equals new, then fireball underscore moving 1. So we set this area effect cloud's fireball moving score to 1, and then immediately we remove the new tag off of all entities that have that tag. Perfect. So now whenever we cast our fireball, we also create an area effect cloud at the same location as the fireball, and we give it a score of fireball moving 1, making it a unique area effect cloud. So now let's make it so that the area effect cloud that we just created will follow our fireball. And usually I like to write my lines of code out and go over them one piece at a time, but there's a lot of possibilities for typos in these lines, and I want to spend more time going over them, so I'm just going to paste them in. So what this is saying is execute as our area effect cloud with fireball moving 1 exists, and then if this is true, so if there is in existence a fireball tagged fireball, then TP our area effect cloud to the closest fireball, thereby making our area effect cloud tagged fireball follow our fireball tagged fireball. And if we, for some reason, shoot a whole bunch of fireballs, or we're in multiplayer, then this will still work because all of the fireballs will create their own area effect cloud tagged fireball. And those area effect clouds tagged fireball will only teleport to the closest fireball tagged fireball, which for them will always be the fireball they were created next to. Okay, on to line 2. Next, we say execute as an entity has a score of fireball moving equaling 1, just like the first line. But unlike the first line, we say unless entity type equals fireball, tag equals fireball. Unless is the opposite of if. If says if this exists or if this is true, then do all this stuff. Unless says unless this is true, meaning if this is not true, then do all of this stuff. So once our fireball no longer exists, meaning it hit something, then it will run this command, which will change the score on our entity, the area effect cloud that was following our fireball. It'll change its score in fireball underscore moving to 2. Okay, on to line 3. Line 3 says execute as any entity has a score of fireball moving equaling 2, which means our fireball has just exploded. Then at that point, we want to run and we want to create a new area effect cloud. We're going to give it a particle called poof that looks quite nice for a fireball explosion. We'll give it a radius of 3 and have it last 3 seconds, a bit longer than our fireball, and we'll tag it explosion. Next, we'll say execute as any entity exists that has a score of fireball moving equaling 2. So this line will be true right after this line just happened. Then we'll run scoreboard players set our area effect cloud that's tag equaling explosion, but only the closest one. We'll give it a score of fireball explosion 34. And then lastly, once again, this condition will happen right after the above 2 lines. We will set the entity that had a score of fireball moving equaling 2 to 0. And then, of course, after the 4 seconds runs out, that area effect cloud will cease to exist. But we don't want it to muddle with our code, so we'll set its score to 0 just to be safe. Now, because of this line of code right here, we will have just created a new area effect cloud right on top of where our fireball exploded. And we'll have given it a score of fireball explosion 34, which will initiate the fireball explosion particles, thereby creating our fireball explosion. Lastly, we need to go to the very bottom of our code, Control-C, Control-V, and we need to actually count down the fireball explosion variable once an entity has a value in that variable. So we'll do fireball underscore explosion. We'll change this @A to @E, since it'll be on an area effect cloud, not a player. And we'll make it so that it counts down the fireball explosion variable by 1 every tick. Let's do file save. Back into Minecraft, we'll do /reload. All right, moment of truth. Let's see that fireball explosion. Awesome. Okay, so our fireball spell is almost done. We have to do just one last thing. We want the fireball to do a bit more damage. I want to do damage, knockback, and I want to set things on fire. Let's go back in data pack one more time. When an entity has a score of fireball explosion equaling 34. I want to use this condition because I want to affect the things that are around the center of the explosion. So I'll copy this condition, come down here. First, let's do the setting on fire. So as an entity exists that has fireball explosion 34, then I want to add s run, and I want to run a new execute command at this time. So I'm going to run execute, and then as any entity exists that's within distance equals ... 7. So all entities within 7 blocks of this. And you could put type equals not player or anything else you want. I want anything to be affected by this, even me if I explode it right in front of myself. Then I'll do at s, so at any of the entities within 7 blocks, and the 7 blocks originate from this location, so the center of the explosion. Run data modify entity at s, fire set value 200s. Perfect, so they'll all get set on fire if they're within 7 blocks of the center of our explosion. Okay, so next I want to deal the damage and the knockback. And so let's go to our favorite website, MC Stacker. I'm going to use the /summon command, and of course I'm going to summon our good friend Creeper. And I want this Creeper to have a fuse of 0, an explosion radius of 5, and I want it to be ignited. So this will be a nice big explosion that'll deal good damage and good knockback. So we'll copy this command. And so right at the center of our explosion, I will summon a Creeper that instantly explodes. So now this Creeper will not only deal extra damage, but will also do knockback. And so anything that survives will get knocked flying. All right, so our fireball is all complete. You can feel free to have it summon 30 Creepers if you want. Do a bunch of different effects, make the fireball explosion look cooler, have at it. But I had a lot of fun doing this fireball, and I have a lot of great new episodes coming up really quickly next. So our fireball spell is all done, but there's one last thing I want to really quickly go over. If you go back to our data pack folder and go into data, you can create another folder called Minecraft, and then inside that create a folder called tags, and then inside that create a folder called functions. And then create 2 new functions, load and tick. But these aren't normal functions, they have to be JSON files. Load will automatically run when the world first opens, and tick will automatically run every tick. For us right now, we don't need load, but if I go into tick, this is how it works. All you have to do is create some curly brackets, and then inside there, create values, and then inside square brackets, put anything you want to have run. And you don't have to create this from scratch each time. If you want to run other functions, just put a comma, and then inside quotes, d&d : and then whatever other function you want to run. And you can have as many functions running nonstop as you want, but with the way I set it up, you should only have to run d&d core. And then with this, you will no longer have to have a command block running d&d core, which means you also won't have to make that command block force loaded so it works everywhere. So just do file save, and then you can destroy the command block, and now D&D Core will work anywhere, everywhere, and not require a command block. Thank you for joining me in creating the Minecraft Dungeons & Dragons Fireball spell. That was a lot of fun. The next 3 tutorials are going to be creating Zelda RPG items, creating a samurai combo combat system, and creating the Ice Mage. Thank you, have a great day, and keep on creating awesome stuff with Minecraft data packs.